Hey, you dorks, this is Gunnar Hansen, Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you are listening to The Dorkening.
Hi, I'm Brian Johnson, and although you probably accidentally stumbled across it and have no idea why you're watching it, you are in fact watching The Dorkening.
Hello, this is Tom Kenny, voice actor, the voice of the Ice King on Adventure Time, and SpongeBob SquarePants. Meow. Oh, Gary the Snail, too. Hey, guess what you're filling your eye holes and ear holes with? The Dorkening! Oh, I love the Dorkening. Very popular in Ooh. And Bikini Bottom.
Hi, I'm Lou Ferrigno. You're watching The Dorkening. And you know what? You don't like me when I get angry, so don't get me angry. You better keep watching The Dorkening.
Hey guys, this is Felissa Rose, and you're watching The Dorkening.
Hey guys, it's Courtney Palm. We're shooting Death House, and you're watching The Dorkening.
This is Anthony Michael Hall, and you're watching The Dorkening. Stay tuned. My friend's going to show you what entertainment's all about, baby.
The Dorkening.
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Rise and shine, my sinners. When Father Evil starts his day, he gets a little deadly. Deadly Grounds coffee has the richest, smoothest flavor you'll find anywhere. It's sinfully delicious. Once you go deadly, you never go back. Order yours at getdeadly.com. Coffee's so good, it's scary.
And we are now live on another episode of Indie Creator Spotlight, created by the Dorkening Podcast Network. And tonight we're doing a indie author discussion. Some awesome guys here, and we're going to ask two very important questions. First, we need to know, how much do you tip an Exorcist? And then we also need to know how if you give a bunny. I messed it up. If you give a bunny a beer. There we go. Patrick, how's it going, sir?
Hello, Leo. You should have scripted it out. I don't know. Did you script it out?
No, I didn't. It's just flying by the seat of my pants, like always. Would you like to introduce our awesome guest?
I would. Do we have him in the chat? Oh, yes, we do. Oh, awesome. We have the author of the Addicted Animal series. He is not only just a great writer, but a super chill dude. We have Sam Miserendino. Sam,
great.
How are you
great.
today?
How are you doing?
Doing all right. Doing all right. Happy to have you here with us.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, glad.
Yeah, and
technology almost didn't cooperate, but we figured it out.
Well, greatly appreciated that that you gave us time this evening, and you were able to get every
that I gave you.
How short a notice, Patrick?
I think was it yesterday I asked you, or Saturday?
Yeah. I think it's Saturday. Luckily, my con schedule was completely clear, unbelievably, this year. So
I know.
I didn't make it. Yeah. What are the chances?
Oh.
It's how are you holding out with no cons this year?
It's tough. I mean, I really miss it. I think like everybody, I think one of the biggest parts of it I miss is just how, it's like a family, and, beyond just meeting the people who buy my books and are interested in them, it's the people you see from year to year, and it's sad to go a year without seeing them.
Yeah, totally agree. That's where we met you, and I grabbed 2 of your books, and I got to grab the other 2. The If You Give a Bunny a Beer and If You Give a Bear a Bong. And your newest book is If You Give a Kitty a Cocktail, correct?
Yep. Yep, that came out in March.
Patrick, you got a copy?
Oh, cool. Yeah, I got a copy. Back when I interviewed Sam back in March or February, I forget, everything kind of is just melding together these last 6 months, and I don't remember anything anymore. But yeah, there's a new one. There's a 4th installment in this series.
Right. It's If You Give a Dog a Doobie, and it's coming out in April of 2021, and there it is.
Yeah. I want to let everybody know, if you are interested in any of these books that we're discussing tonight, there are links in the show notes where you can get Patrick's books and also Sam's books as well. And nice and easy. All you got to do is click. It brings you right to the store. All your books are available on Amazon, so I got those links there as well. Yeah. Yeah, I need to get caught up. I'm going to order the Give Kitty a Cocktail tonight. And then you said the other one comes out when again?
In April of 2021. They're trying to target 4/20, appropriately enough, as the release date. And hopefully we'll hit that date. So
nice.
That would definitely be good marketing right there. It writes itself.
Yeah, doesn't it?
So I've been I've done a couple of live shows that I do on Friday nights, and the last couple that I've done, I've made sure to show off your books because they're just super fun, and I want you to sell a lot of them. And we got into a bit of a discussion as to where the series is going.
Mm-hmm.
You had said that you you pretty much have everything planned out, like where it's going and like what the various substances and various animal combinations are going to be. But we had some interesting ones, and I don't know how good your copyright lawyer is, but I think my favorite one might have been If You Give a Xenomorph a Xanax.
Oh, that's a great one. That's a good one. Well, I think I might have told you the last time we talked that one of the books we have in the works, or sort of in the waiting line, is If Addicted Animals A to Z. And we've, just done it as an A to Z kids book, but it's of course like, if you give an alpaca acid and then you turn the page and see what happens. So we're still working on it. So there could be room for the xenomorph.
Yeah. I mean, there's some great stuff. And Mike Odum does amazing work with the illustrations for this, definitely bringing your stories to life. I think that's, one of the more attractive parts of this book. It's not just, what the subject matter is, but he's able to really bring that to life. How much input do you have with the illustrations?
Mike and I work really closely together. So I really map out what I'd like to see each page show and each, the progression in terms of the imagery. So I'll write what I envision the imagery being, and then Mike will work within, whether or not how I see it is actually possible or would work visually. But we work very closely together. I mean, we brainstorm and we kick around ideas as we're talking about a new book and where we might go with it. Mike comes up with some really funny stuff on his own. I think I will not forgive him for coming up with one of the funniest lines in If You Give a Bear a Bong, since he's the artist and he's not supposed to be funnier than I am. But there's that line, if you give a bear a bong, he'll ask if you're a cop. And Mike wrote that. So I've told him that as payback, I get to draw something in one of our books.
Oh, nice. Have you thought of what it's going to be?
Not yet, but no. I'll do it when the books aren't selling anymore, because if I draw, no one would buy it.
Or bong, he'll ask if you're a cop. The expression on the bear's face is just priceless.
Oh yeah.
I will say we talked about this a little bit. There's a recurring Easter egg in your books as well.
Right.
If you want
we actually have two. One is the first graphic novel I wrote, which is Prince of Pieces. And that appears in one form or another in each of the Addicted Animal books. And then the other is, and I don't know if we discussed this before, but it's Carrie Talbot was the artist on Prince of Pieces, and he was Mike's art teacher, and just a really fantastic guy. And sadly, he passed away just as he finished Prince of Pieces. So what we do is, within each book, we have a nod to Carrie Talbot. So like If You Give a Bear a Bong, the speaker is called a Talbot speaker that's in the kid's room. Or If You Give a Kitty a Cocktail, the girl has a music sheet on her stand and it's the Talbot Suite. So we sort of give a nod to Carrie, or a tribute to Carrie, in every book we do.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a class move on your guys' part, and it's a kind of a way to, help memorialize, somebody who was so important and so influential in creating, getting these stories out there to the world.
Oh yeah, and he and he brought Mike and I together, because when Carrie and I were working on Prince of Pieces, he asked Mike to come on as the letterer, and I didn't realize what a talented artist Mike was. But after Carrie passed away, Mike asked if he could do the cover for Prince of Pieces, and it was just phenomenal. So then when I had the idea for the Addicted Animal series, I, of course, went to Mike first.
Yeah, definitely keep pulling from that well.
Yeah, we've got plenty of ideas. So as long as the publisher will allow us to run with it, and even when they won't, we'll probably still find a way to get the books out there. The kind of redheaded stepchild of the Addicted Animal series is If You Give a Panda a Percocet. And every time I meet with the publisher, I really push to try to get that out next. And every time they shut the door and say, no, that's just too much. But someday, some way, it's going to get out. Panda has cameos in some of the books.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another Easter egg.
And just a heads up, I just completed my purchase of If You Give a Kitty a Cocktail. It'll be here Wednesday.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got to make sure I'm all caught up with the set before the next one comes out,
Right.
Yeah, I still have my posters that will eventually end up behind me here, because I have the I don't have Kitty, but I have Bunny and Bear. I have the posters from Rock and Shock,
Right.
which is where we met, and where I picked up the first two, because I was just like, oh my god, how do you not buy this book? Like, you walk by, they say don't judge a book by its cover, but you walk by and you see this thing, and it's just like, you guys had your big, like, I don't even know what size it was, but like that huge banner that you had hanging there,
Right.
like a house sigil in Game of Thrones. It's like, oh, that's great. And you got your shirt. Like, I love the shirt. I love the fact that you have the shirts. Like,
now, do you sell those shirts?
I do. Right now, it's really just kind of special order because I haven't found a way to mass produce them. But if anybody's interested, they can contact me on Facebook. And basically, I just charge people the cost of making it. I'm kind of honored that people would want to, wear an Addicted Animal series shirt. So, if anyone watching is interested, they can just reach out to me on Facebook and I can make arrangements. There's this one woman who loves the books and she's gotten a t-shirt for Bunny and Kitty. So that's pretty cool.
Nice. Now, where did the idea come from?
It came from the children's books, if you give a moose a muffin, if you give a mouse a cookie. I've got 2 kids, and I read, well, actually, there's one, if you give a pig a pancake, and I read that to my son 1,000,000 times. And after a while, I thought, this could use a twisted twist. And jokingly, I said to my wife, wouldn't this be so much better if one of these stories was if you give a bunny a beer? And she said, you should write it. So I did. And, so that was the first book in the series. And then as a joke, on the back cover of If You Give a Bunny a Beer, on the first edition of it, we thought it would be funny to do covers of books that didn't exist, like creating this impression that there was this addicted animal series, which seemed kind of ridiculous at the time. So, we did If You Give a Bear a Bong, If You Give a Kitty a Cocktail, and If You Give a Panda Percocet, and we just put the covers on the back. And so many people asked for a bear, they said, well, where can we get that book? That then was next in line, and I wrote it.
Nice.
What's the typical life cycle for this? Like, how, once you get the idea, what's the typical life cycle of getting the idea, getting the story written, getting the artwork done, and then getting it out to be published?
It's about I'd say it's about 1.5 years. It's about 1.5 years between sort of conception to birth. So it's a long sort of gestation period. Normally, like, for example, if you give a dog a Doobie, Mike's just finishing the artwork and should have it done by the end of this month. And then he'll get it to the publisher. And then, from that date, they usually want it about 6 months before the release date.
Oh, that makes sense. You don't want to rush this stuff. You got to make sure you get the art just right. You got to make sure you get the words the way you want them, and there's always going to be some back and forth, I'm sure, between you and the publisher. It's like, oh, maybe it would read a little better if you do it this way. If your wife's anything like mine, there's a lot of constructive criticism. It's like, well, this is good, but you could try to do it again completely different.
Right. I mean, in terms of my publisher, I've been luckier than I have been with my wife because they give less constructive criticism. It's really nice because they really like what we've done, so they actually take a pretty hands-off approach. In terms of as we're in the process of doing it. So when we deliver it, they might have some minor tweaking suggestions, but for the most part, they pretty much let us run with where we want to go with it.
I think that's excellent. You don't want a ton of interference because, like, you start tweaking things over and over and over and over again, and then, it's not quite the product that you introduced in the first place.
Right. And you don't want to lose that.
No, definitely not.
So, since both of you are authors, and we're talking about, I could have sworn I muted that. Where do you guys find your inspiration?
That's an interesting question. Sometimes it just happens to be like, for the title of the book, I had a conversation with someone about, like, why is it that you tip, the drive-through at Dunkin' Donuts, but you don't tip, at McDonald's? Like, why is that? Why is one socially acceptable? Why and the other one is not? Like, what's the deal there? And then it just started snowballing into this. It's like, well, how come you don't tip firefighters after they, take your cat out of a tree or, save your house from burning down? And then it just got into the ridiculousness. And then it's like, oh, well, what about an exorcist? Like, an exorcist, you definitely want to tip, because that's a service that you're not going to get all that often. And and then I actually wrote the haiku from there. I don't know, it's weird. Like, sometimes it's something that I hear or something that I see, and just a combination of words that's like, oh, that would be an interesting story title, like Savage Guardian, or I don't know, something crazy. Sam, you're probably way different.
Not a lot, but by the way, I gotta say, I started reading How Much Do You Tip an Exorcist, and it's a great book. Just a great blend of horror and humor. And just based on what I've read so far, I'd highly recommend it to anyone out there. Really enjoying it.
That really means a lot. Thank you very much.
I have to say, I have not received my copy yet.
I haven't received my copies yet. So they're still in Ohio.
Right. But in terms of me for writing, it's actually not, it's kind of similar to what you're describing. I mean, it's really kind of seeing something in sort of a different light and a different angle, and then building on an idea from that. You know, like, for example, from reading these children's books, it's like just sort of looking at it at a different angle, thinking, what if it was this instead of that? And then going from there and building on it.
Yeah, it's like I've mentioned this a couple of times because people have asked me this recently. There's really only a handful of stories, or I think there's like 8 story types that can be told, and a lot of them center around the hero's journey. You know, and it's the same story every single time. It's just, how do you approach the specific subject matter? How do you get from point A to point B? Like, if I were to tell you there's a story about a young person who, you know, they're the chosen one, but they don't know that they're the chosen one. And, you know, they're an orphan, and they live, you know, on the secluded planet or secluded, you know, whatever. And, you know, they don't have the best life growing up. And, you know, this one day, this wise old person comes to them and says, you know, you are the one, you will bring balance, or you will, you know, vanquish the evil. And, you know, during the course of their adventures, the wise old mentor, you know, ends up getting killed. And, you know, now this person with, you know, experiencing their fledgling abilities, whatever they happen to be, now has to go on without most of the training that they need, but they're able to overcome whatever obstacle. Like, am I talking about, you know, Harry Potter? Am I talking about Luke Skywalker? Am I talking about Rocky? Because Rocky loses his wise old mentor figure, you know, like, you know, they suffer several defeats before they finally break open and achieve their goal. So, like, you see this so many times. It's a way, it's just, how do you tell this story? And I think, you know, for the people who really are able to come up with the creativity necessary to tell not only a compelling story, but, you know, have the way to articulate it, I think it's very rare that you come across these stories. You know, for every Harry Potter or, you know, Star Wars or whatever, like, there's a million other things that never saw the light of day because, well, the bones of the story might have been there, maybe just they weren't able to articulate it as well as they wanted to. I don't know if that makes any sense at all.
Oh yeah, no, it certainly does. And, you know, I think along those lines too is that you have these sort of general storylines, but what also is critically important is making it relatable, so that, you know, people can see something of themselves or someone they know in the stories or in the characters. You know, because then I think you create a connection with the reader. You know, that if that's lacking, it's just going to be a sort of shallow experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's why there are so many writers who don't specify what their characters look like, or, you know, you could have somebody like George R.R. Martin, who's like, this is, you know, the guy was 5'5", you know, 195 pounds. He had brown eyes, you know, scraggly gray hair, you know, and like to a T, what he's wearing, what he looks like, you know, his favorite food. And then you could have, like we interviewed Glenn Zipper, Elaine Mungin the other day. They wrote a book called Devastation Class, and they specifically just like they basically named the characters and gave them attributes without specifically saying they're this tall, they're that tall. Like they'll say, like person A is, 6 inches taller than person B, just so you can kind of get that perspective. But it allows the reader, like you're saying, Sam, it allows the reader to kind of put themselves into the shoes of whatever character they relate to the most. And I think that's a really good writing technique. Like you can be as descriptive as you want, but once you say, this guy is, 6'5", blonde hair, blue eyes. If I'm not 6'5", blonde hair, blue eyes, I can't relate to that character as well as I could have if they were just like, here he is, he's wearing a blue shirt.
Right.
So I'm going to take a break here for a quick second for our sponsor. But when I come back, I want to talk to both of you about, for an author just starting out, what are some hints that you can give them? What are some pitfalls that you guys may have come across? But before that, tonight we're talking with some awesome indie authors, and more than ever, we need to support indie creatives and indie businesses like Deadly Grounds Coffee, our sponsor. They make the most amazing coffee. It's just a little mom and pop shop here in Connecticut, Norwalk, Connecticut, and they make the best coffee you'll ever have. If you like flavored coffee, Death by Chocolate's really good. Also, Witch's Brew, which is a chocolate raspberry. If you don't like flavored coffee, they do have some regular flavors as well, and it's not like super caffeinated where you feel the chemicals coming through you. It's just a really nice, smooth, really good flavor. But don't listen to me. Here's a zombie talking about coffee.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds Coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds Coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
And you can head on over to getdeadly.com for Deadly Grounds Coffee. Link is in the show notes, along with the how to get the books for our awesome guests, like How to Tip an Exorcist, or if you give a bunny a beer. Cool stuff.
I appreciate you including the links, Leo.
Oh, totally. Makes it easy, and I won't harp on you too much for me not getting my copy yet.
Again, I haven't gotten mine. Like I know several people have gotten theirs already, and like they've sent me pictures or like, hey, look at this, look at that. It's like, I know, but I'm waiting on mine from FedEx. So
yeah. So I know there's a lot of people that follow us that are authors, or they're trying to become an author. What's some advice you would give them, and what are some hurdles that you may have hit starting out? Let's start with Sam.
Okay.
Well, the advice I guess I would give is certainly be careful when you're starting out, especially if you're starting out in the realm of, as a lot of people do with self-publishing, which, that's pretty much what I started with. My first publisher was sort of a quasi self-publishing situation where I fronted the printing costs, but they had a sort of network and got it out there and did a fantastic job. But my advice is that if you do take that route, and I know there are a lot of options out there now, like print on demand, and you can go through Amazon. Just be careful when people are looking to charge you for more than the cost of printing your books, because when they're charging you up front, I'd be very skeptical of that. And there are a lot of people just waiting out there to exploit people whose ambition or dream is to write. So you've really got to go in it with a very, just being very cautious about who you're dealing with and what they're asking you for. My experience was, great in that, I think it demonstrates how if you do get your work out there and you're really work hard about getting it in front of people, it can then get you to the next level. Because as I said, my first book, and Bunny initially was in this sort of quasi self-published situation. But then it did so well and got enough attention, and I was able to use that to then get an agent and then eventually get a pretty large publisher interested. So, again, I would say if when cons return and when there's that opportunity, if you're starting out, just get out there and get out there with your work and get it in front of as many people as you can, and network as much as you can.
Nice. What about you, Patrick?
Well, I had a similar situation as Sam, where the first thing that I ever published was called Cycle of the Hunter, and I found a company that wanted to do it. Like, there were several companies that were like, yeah, sure, just give us $14,000. And I was like, what? I was like, nah, no, I don't have $14,000. First off. Second off, I don't know what I'm getting for that. I don't know who you are. So no, sorry, can't do it. And I finally found a publishing company that was like, it was free. And the only issue is they were god awful. Like, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna send out all these things. We're gonna do all this stuff. They did nothing. They designed the cover and they printed it. That was about it. It was essentially print on demand. And like an idiot, I did my second book through them as well too, Mist and Shadow, and there was an issue. They're like, oh, your books aren't really selling that well, so we're going to jack the price up. So all of a sudden, this paperback book from some guy nobody ever heard of was going for $24.95.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't selling at $19.99. I'm like, why the hell is someone going to buy my book? They don't know who the hell I am. And, when you can get like, a Stephen King or something for $8, why would you buy my book? Like, nobody knows who I am. So that was like one of the big issues. But when it came to how much do you tip an Exorcist, like, I had the title for years, and I had worked with the illustrator Jeanette, who is just a phenomenal person and a supremely talented artist. We had done this thing called Horror Haikus Day, which, it started off with the Reddit thread about 2-sentence stories, like the famous one, the last man on earth sat alone in his house. There was a knock on the door. That was it. And I was like, oh, I want to try writing some of these. And I wrote a whole bunch of them. And I was like, wow, some of these are actually pretty good. And she was like, well, I'll illustrate them. So she would illustrate them. And then like each week we would do this. And her art made me want to write better stories. Even if they're only, 2-sentence, she was still coming up with these amazing pieces of artwork. And so last year at ScareCon, we ended up meeting someone by the name of Ben Goldsmith, who is a comic book writer for Source Point Press. And we became friends. We had him on Throwdown Thursday and everything. And he we would see him at cons and we talked about writing and stuff. And he's like, oh, I didn't know you actually wrote stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I had a book I published through Amazon called Monsters in the Closet, which is just a bunch of flash fiction. And he's like, oh, well, we have a prose section at Source Point. I can introduce you to someone who can, take a look and see if what you have is something that we might be interested in. And I said, awesome. So I met him at Rock and Shock. Lots of stuff happened at Rock and Shock. So I'm very upset that we don't have a Rock and Shock or any cons at all.
Yeah.
And me being the neophyte that I am when it comes to pitching a book, I had just I was like, oh, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put everything together and I'm gonna print it out on 8.5 by 11 paper and put this huge stack of paper together and be like, here's my book. But here we are, almost a year later, and it, he liked it. He liked the stories, and it's people are reading it, people like Sam, and I can't tell you how awesome it was to see my stuff actually published. And I've told this story a couple of times, but when Josh Werner for Source Point, actually we had been in contact, he was the gentleman who accepted the book and was like, yes, this is something we want to do. He texted me and he was like, hey, do you want to see the cover wrap for the book? And I was like, absolutely. And he texted it over to me, and I shit you not, I nearly started crying in the middle of Walmart because it was becoming real, and it was weird. Like someone else wanted to publish my book. Sam, did you go through something similar? I'm not asking if you started crying in the middle of Walmart. So you're going to start crying in the middle. Like Walmart's not a place where people don't cry, but did you go through something like when you first, got the, like, yes, we're going to publish this, and then you get to see some of the, the PDFs or like some of the mock-ups, like what kind of emotions did you have?
It was pretty incredible. I have to say I remember the first time, like I walked into a Barnes and Noble and saw my books on the shelf, and that was just, an unbelievable feeling. And it was completely unexpected because it was about a month before they were supposed to come out. So I knew they were coming out, but I just walked in to get a card for somebody and walked over to the humor section, and there was my Bunny and Bear book sitting on the shelves. And that was just an incredible feeling. And for me, the other moment was when the first time I met with my publisher in New York City, and my publisher and my agent and I and Mike all met to talk about the books coming out, and it was just such a euphoric feeling. I mean, the hotel I was staying in was about at least 50 blocks from where the publisher was, and I just walked the whole way, and it was like walking on air through Manhattan. That was a great feeling.
Yeah, I imagine like something like that would be just phenomenal. It's like this thing that I created that, a friend of mine worked with me and helped me elevate. Like the way you were talking about Mike is the same way I talk about Jeanette. Like when we first started this, her art, like I would see what she would do for art, and I was like, well, I have to step up my game, to make my stories worthy of the art that she's creating. And we never really had any any set stuff. I was like, here's my story, go nuts. Even with the cover of the book, I was like, I totally trust you. Whatever you want to go with, it's all up to you. And the cover of the book is actually the illustration that she uses for the story that was inspired by this, Gratuity. So she just kind of colored it, and she colored it the pinkish magenta color specifically because it matches my beard and my wife's hair. So she wanted it to, so when it comes out on a shirt, it matches very nicely.
Nice.
And it's the only color in all of it. So she did 30 illustrations, and then she did story headers for the 10 short stories, which, like, the art is, I was actually going through looking at it today because I hadn't looked at it since she gave it to me months ago. And I was like, man, this stuff is so good. It's so good. Like, I haven't even shown my wife all of the art yet.
Yeah, it is great art. I love her work.
She's so talented. Like she did our podcast logo. Yeah, and Colleen got one of these shirts, which was just like super cool. Colleen was very nice, and she's like, "Oh, look at my new haircut and also my shirt." Like, oh yeah, it still feels surreal to me. I don't know if it feels that way for you, Sam, because you've got several books out at this point. But does that euphoric feeling, like, I'm sure that nothing equals the first time, but like is it still that just like that great sense of accomplishment and satisfaction every time you get something new out?
Oh yeah, it's a thrill. I mean, I'm just as excited now, when I go to Barnes and Noble and see If You Give a Kitty a Cocktail on the shelf. My daughter actually accuses me of stalking my books, because whenever we go to a new city, I'll have to pop into the Barnes and Noble and see them on the shelf. So I still haven't gotten over stalking my books when I go to different towns.
Do you like arrange the books so that you can actually put like the cover facing out?
Well, I do when they have them spine out. I always take them and put them out so that luckily a lot of times they have it so the cover's facing out. But yeah, I absolutely will not just simply sit by and allow a book to sit on a shelf spine out. So.
Yeah, especially with the great art. Like, I feel like I need to go take a stroll to not a stroll, but a drive to like a Barnes and Noble, because there's very few bookstores near me, but there is a Barnes and Noble not too far. And it's like, you know what? Maybe I take a ride down there just to see if my book is there. And then so I can say that I nearly started crying in both a Walmart and Barnes and Noble, have a slightly classier story.
I've cried in Walmarts, but for different reasons. So.
Yeah. Like I was, speaking of like that euphoric feeling, I ended up walking around. I spent twice as much money as I was going to. I had a list. I got, I think, most of the stuff on the list, but I got like extra stuff that I didn't need because I was just so like out of my own head at the time. Like it's just like, oh yeah, we're out of bird seed. We don't have a bird. Yeah, but we're out.
So I want to remind everybody that the books we're talking about tonight. So How Much Do You Tip an Exorcist? There's a link down below for Oxeye Media, and you can order the book now. And also the books for If You Give a Bunny a Beer, and If You Give a Bear a Bong, and If You Give a Kitty a Cocktail. The links are in the show notes as well. And those you can get right from Amazon.
Yeah, there you go. Give a kitty a cocktail. There you go.
I'll be able to do that Wednesday. Next, is it coming tomorrow? Can't be coming tomorrow. It's not overnight.
Right. It depends on how quick Amazon is. But yeah, I love the fact that people are like buying something that I created. Like it's so weird. And like, Sam, you were very, very kind in your words, mentioning to me, what you thought of the book, the other night when I reached out to you about the show. Like that meant a lot. And I just want to say, face to face to you, that I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, but it's it's wonderful, really an enjoyable read. And the one thing I like a lot that you do is that, as we were talking about earlier, as I was saying, that I think it's important to create relatable characters, and I'm impressed with the way you do that. Like you weave in within the short stories, like just experiences that are so common and so relatable that you get your reader invested in these characters, even in this sort of shorter format, which is great.
Well, I appreciate that. Like, do you have a specific like I know you haven't gone through all the short stories yet, but is there like a specific one of the the haikus or one of the 2-sentence stories that like really stuck out to you? Or
well, I'm like in terms of this, actually, like even though I haven't read all the short stories, I really like the first one, the girl on the train. I thought that was excellent, and I liked the the haiku. I can't recall if it was a haiku or a 2-sentence story about the zombie family having dinner. I thought that was really funny and really good. But really, I mean, they're all strong. You know, there's like nothing that I've read that I haven't thought, wow, this is really, this is a really cool story. It's really, got a lot of sort of a human angle, and but it's got the humor and the horror, which I love.
I'm just trying to for next time, if there's something that didn't land, kind of cut that out.
Well, yeah, no, like what I liked about when I was growing up, I was a huge fan of like creepy and eerie comics, which really dating myself here, but they always had just such great twists at the end. And I really like that part of your story. It reminds me of that kind of storytelling where you just have really cool twists at the end that are just nice hooks. But
Sorry, I mean to walk on edge. I watched a lot of Twilight Zone as a kid, and that's definitely an inspiration.
Yeah, it shows. Well, that's a great source for inspiration. That's for sure.
Colleen in the chat says, I so need to grab these books and give a few as Christmas gifts. I feel like they'll definitely speak to certain friends in particular.
They're a lot of fun. Like, we talked about this when you were on with me, Sam, on one of my shows. And at this one, I don't remember which one it is. I do so many at this point. I do like 4 shows a week. Yeah, and it's not just the art. It's not just the words. It's how they seamlessly blend together. Like the expressions on the animals' faces. Like, I can't draw. I can occasionally get something that looks halfway decent, but I draw essentially the same things every single time to get to get the facial expressions. I mean, like, look how happy he is. And had another beer. Like, that's he's so happy. And like, speaking of things that are relatable, like I read these books and it's like, especially Kitty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh yeah, I know her. Oh yeah, I've seen this. Yeah.
Sure.
And you see these, like if you give a bunny a beer, he'll tell you what's what. Like, let me tell you what's wrong with your generation. Like, they are very relatable. The bear, oh my God, where they're looking for stuff, find things. That is one of the best parts of the 3 books so far, and I'm really looking forward to how you take the personality of a dog, who dogs are already like super laid back and chill to begin with, and start getting them high. Like, that's
I'm really excited about this book. My agent keeps telling me he thinks it's going to be the biggest one in the series. He's real happy with how it's come out, and so are Mike and I. I mean, it just I'm happy with all of them, but it really feels tight, and it really feels like it captures a really cool element of just what might happen if you give a dog a doobie. The tagline is, it reveals the answer to the age-old question of whether or not you can teach a stone dog new tricks, or even get him to remember old ones.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that really is good.
But as you were saying, Mike does do a great job of like capturing just these emotions and characters, and the expressiveness gives the animal in each book a personality of its own. That I think is great. And one of the things I find most rewarding is, and another reason I really miss cons, is that the books people read them at my booth, and they're usually laughing, or I love it when people say, you wrote this book about me. How did you know I'm like this? So that's always cool.
Yeah. Again, even though they're not human characters, when you anthropomorphize them, people can look at them and go, oh, that's totally something that I do. Like, that's me every single time.
Right. Well, Bunny is definitely a little bit of a kind of autobiographical. As I say, they say, write what you know. So
it's true.
Well, with any luck, hopefully in a year we'll be back at the cons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the Netflix series for the Addicted Animals. I mean, the adult cartoons are all the rage. I mean, look at all the stuff that gets out there. Like,
oh yeah,
Yeah, well, hopefully someday. Hopefully, it's. I'm exploring a lot of possibilities with the books, and I'd certainly like to see that happen someday.
yeah, or even, well, actually, HBO Max would be the place to go because they're definitely coming out with some adult oriented cartoons. I don't know if Netflix has too many.
Well, they have the Disenchantment, and they have F is for Family, and they have what's that other? No, Hulu has that one you told me with the knights, like the little people.
Oh yeah, what the hell was that?
I forget. Crossing Swords.
Yes. Yep.
Wasn't it like BoJack Horseman? Is that on?
I think it's either Netflix or Hulu.
I think Netflix bought it. Could be wrong.
That's one that I never really watched, but I liked F is for Family because I like Bill Burr because he's a local guy, and the other guy who created it with him, Mike Price, is a writer for The Simpsons, and he's a really fun guy. Colleen says Adult Swim.
That's a great suggestion from Colleen.
Yeah. Yeah, she says, for the audio listeners, would you ever think of animating shorts out of these books? Because I feel like they would be viral hits. Yeah,
that's a great suggestion. I'll have to talk to Mike about that.
There you go.
Yeah, that would be. Well, if you ever need voice acting for it, I could be a pretty convincing bear. Oh.
Well, we're coming up on the hour. What else should we cover?
I was going to ask Sam, you kind of touched on it a little bit with Doobie Dog, but I was going to ask, what was of the three that have come out so far, which one has been your favorite? Which one do you think people respond to the most? Like when you're at cons and people come up to you and you have I know you had the two, and then when Kitty came out, cons kind of dried up. But which one do you get the most feedback from?
Definitely Bear. Bear at conventions is my biggest seller. Bunny's fairly close, but not. I'd probably sell, maybe for every 50 bunny, if you give a bunny of beers that I'd sell at a con, I'd sell 75 copies of If You Give a Bear a Bong. So, I see a lot of people reading both, and I get a lot of feedback from both. But Bear definitely outsells Kitty or Bunny.
See, that I would have guessed it would have been closer to 50-50, and I would say, Kitty is probably closer to, more geared towards the ladies, because it's definitely like my wife and some of her friends hanging out, having just half of 4 bottles of wine. My wife actually goes and she has a few lady friends that she hangs out with. Last time they did a paint night, which is, I never get this thing behind me that she made for me. And it's just, it's very reminiscent of how Kitty is. It's like, Sex in the City, all the ladies at brunch, with their mimosas complaining about what's going on in the world and lives. And it's so brilliant. Like, it's so well done. You said your wife helps you, with constructive criticism. Did she have a little more to say on that one than the other two? Just so you could kind of get like a female perspective?
Yeah, definitely contributed more ideas and thoughts and helping with refinements with respect to Kitty. And she also just really loved how, as you were saying, she felt it really captured that experience of, sort of going out and hanging out with friends and sort of what follows. And Some of it was certainly inspired by her experiences, like when Bunny's really boorish and approaches Kitty. I don't want to ruin this for Leo, though. Spoiler alert. But I really like Kitty a lot. Like I like all the books a lot. I mean, there's different things for each that I really connect with. I mean, Bunny's like my first child, so that has a special place. And Bear was just a lot of fun to write and a lot of fun to research, of course. I just like the tone of Kitty. And it is tough this year. I mean, it's a small complaint given all that's going on, but I really would love to have seen how Kitty would have approached or been received at conventions, because that's real. That's where it's just such a fantastic experience. And I don't know if you saw it with your other books, but once the circuit begins again, you'll probably see it with your book. What it's like to just get that feedback and that instant response. And I just saw another comment by Colleen. She's got great suggestions. I got
Oh yeah, Colleen is very, very supportive, and she's a class lady, 100%.
So what she said, the book would also probably sell like hotcakes at those music festivals and raves in the woods. Actually, we just had on for another show. I didn't know there's a music show that happens on just like 15 minutes away from me in Jewett City. It's Stoner and Doom Fest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and apparently it's a large event and it gets quite a few people. You definitely want to look into it, Sam.
Yeah, definitely will.
Yeah,
I think that's a good call.
Yeah.
Well, what's curious to me was how well my books do at horror conventions, because I sort of started on the horror con circuit because my first book was horror based, and I just kept doing it and bringing Bunny and Bear to horror conventions. And it was always interesting how well they did at those. They kind of stood out in that, these bright light colors in this world of black and red. So.
Well, I think horror and comedy mix so well together that, these are the characters who are going to get killed first in the horror movies.
Right.
The drunk guy, the high guy, the girls complaining, trying to run away in their high heels. Like those are the ones that are
no spoilers.
Horror movies.
Okay.
Spoilers. I was going to ask, I do have one final question before we wrap things up. How much research did you do while writing each book?
Bunny, I've probably been researching since college. Bear, I had to sort of renew my research. It had been a while. And Kitty was really based on a lot of observations when my wife and I would go to, there's this place called the Chocolate Bar. You'd always see groups of women together, and we just kind of talk about that, and then we talk about her experiences when she went out. But I definitely I think it's important for the sake of realism to do research, and I'm willing to take that hit for my art, so to speak.
Yeah, make that sacrifice to make sure that you're coming with an authentic voice. I do like Colleen's character question, because she came in a little late, so I think she missed it earlier.
She did.
Explore characters having drug adventures, like if you give a mole a mushroom.
Yeah, that's a great one. We if she came in a little late, like I said, we explore that in Addicted Animals A to Z, which is actually completely written and illustrated, just not published yet. So, but Mole didn't make it. Another M animal did.
Yeah, I mean, if we were, like I said, we were trying to come up with a bunch of different ones, and we're like, oh, what about X? What would X be? What would Q be? I'm like, oh, if you give a quack a quaalude, like that's
right.
What it is.
A quack?
Quokka, Quokka. They're the big rodents that always have like the smile on their face. They always look like they're smiling.
Okay.
But what you don't know about them, the reason they're smiling is because a quokka will throw its baby at a predator so it can escape.
Oh, God.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That is a true fact. That is not something that I am just making up. But if you ever get to quokka, like that might be good. Like the cops chucks babies.
That's great.
That's wrong. That's just wrong. Just want to remind everybody there's a bunch of links in the show notes, and we urge you support indie artists. Right now everybody's going through a tough time. If you're doing a little better off than some, if you still have your job, everything's going well, and you like awesome books, like if you give a bunny a beer, or how to tip an exorcist, links are down below. And we urge you definitely support, indie businesses and indie artists. It's the way to go. We all got to help each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Sam, where do you like interacting with your fans the most? I mean, are you Instagram guy, Facebook? Where do you like talking to your fans?
Facebook. That seems to be the primary place. So, a lot of interaction on Facebook. Instagram less so. I'm just not as good on Instagram, I suppose. So yeah, definitely Facebook. And of course, when cons were in swing, that was my absolute favorite place. Just that face-to-face interaction and getting a chance to talk to people and seeing what they liked and how they responded to the books, and seeing the same people come back looking for new books. That was always great.
Yeah, it's definitely can't wait for the cons to come back, and totally agree. And we're so glad that's where we met you. And I think it was Rock and Shock we met you as well. Where just walking through the aisles, and it's all blood and guts, and all of a sudden you got a poster with a big white bunny.
Right?
You got to stop. Patrick, my friend.
Let's see. Well, before I get into where you should follow me, and I'm gonna say the same thing that I've been saying when it comes to purchasing these books. And Sam, this will work out well for you as well. Everyone should have 4 copies. So you have your copy that you read, one signed by the writer, one signed by the illustrator, one signed by both that were covered completely. So 4 copies of each book. That's what you want to get.
Okay.
As far as following me on social media, I always say, just check out throwitdonthursdaypodcast.com, because that's, there's a lot of stuff that's on there. You can find me on this show, occasionally on Wednesdays, the Dorkening show that we do. But on Tuesdays I record, on Fridays we post the Loudest Sports show that I do with my brothers, and my niece picks NFL games. She didn't do that great this week, but last week she was 8-8, which is pretty good. She beat my brother, which was pretty impressive. You can also find me Throw Down Thursday every Thursday. I occasionally do live shows. This Friday there is a live Trivial Pursuit horror contest, and the winner of that will be going on to compete for the 2020 Throwdown Thursday Horror Championship. So tune into that, because that's going to be a lot of fun. We got some great writers and filmmakers and actors. Like there is some strong competition here. But yeah, Twitter and Instagram both at Patrick Rahall, very easy, and I'm on Facebook as well. So just pop by one of the groups and let me know what you think. And how much do you tip an exorcist? Available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Source Point Press, Oxeye Media. Check it out. You might just like it.
So, how much do you tip an exorcist?
Well, I'm going to give you a little Easter egg, because I put an Easter egg in that book, and Sam, you probably saw it. There is a page that has what looks like an invoice for the exorcism from The Exorcist, and actually did research, and I found out what the address was of that house, found out what the current tax rate is, and figured out how much it would be to exactly to cost the family exactly $666. So all of those figures are accurate. It all depends on the service. I mean, there's a lot of things that that are involved. You know, there's vestment cleaning, there's holying the holy water. Like, that stuff's not free. You know?
Don't you have to recharge the proton packs, or is that something else?
That's a different guy.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for watching. For me, just Google Leopold. You'll find a bunch of stuff, but more importantly, head on over to thedorkening.com, which you can find 30 shows on a network now, which is absolutely insane. A lot of awesome stuff, including some sports shows now as well. A lot of a lot of horror shows and comedy shows, and just about everything. You know, if you love listening to podcasts or watching live streams like us, just head on over to thedorkening.com. But more importantly, head on to the show notes and click on those links for our awesome guests, and get yourself some awesome funny. And we'll get
4 of each book.
4 of each book. Yes, 4 of each book.
And if you're stoned, you might even buy 8 copies of each book because you'll forget you ordered it.
Right. For every 50 copies of Bunny, you have to get 75 copies of Bear.
Right. That's why I sell more, actually, right? People forget they bought it.
Refresh. It's fine.
I wasn't stoned, but I actually did that recently. There was a game I saw on sale, and I was so excited that it was on sale, so I bought a copy. Then I realized I already had it, and actually ended up giving it to Patrick here.
Yeah, it was very nice of you.
We'll catch you guys later. Bye.
All right. Thank you.